My name is Elena Whitmore. I'm 28 years old. 3 years ago, my own parents told our entire town that I was mentally unstable. They told my employers I was unpredictable. They told my friends I had violent mood swings. They even warned my neighbors that I wasn't safe to be around. Within 2 months, I lost my job. Within 4 months, I lost almost every friend I had. And eventually, I lost my apartment. But that's not the strangest part of the story. The strangest part is how everything fell apart for them. Because the lie they spent years building collapsed the day my old high school teacher asked them one simple question. Just one. A question so small it sounded harmless. But that question exposed something my parents never expected anyone to notice. Before we get into the story, if you enjoy real-life stories about family secrets and unexpected justice, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. And I want to ask you something. If your own parents told everyone you were mentally unstable, what would you do? Would you confront them? Would you leave and never speak to them again? Or would you try to prove the truth? Tell me in the comments. I'm honestly curious. Now let me take you back 4 years. Back to the moment when I first realized something inside my family wasn't right. 4 years ago, I still trusted my parents completely. That sounds strange now, but when you grow up inside something, you don't always recognize it as abnormal. My parents, Margaret and Daniel Whitmore, were respected people in our town. My mother volunteered at the community center. My father worked as a financial advisor and knew almost everyone in town. People described them the same way. Reliable, kind, responsible. If you asked anyone about them, they'd say the same thing. Elena is lucky to have parents like that. And for most of my life, I believed that too. When I was growing up, my parents were very involved in every decision I made, which friends I spent time with, what hobbies I pursued, which college I applied to. They said they were protecting me, guiding me, helping me avoid mistakes. And for a long time, I accepted that explanation. But there was something my mother used to say whenever I disagreed with her. It was almost a habit. Elena, you know stress doesn't affect you the way it affects other people. When I was younger, I didn't understand what she meant. So I ignored it, until the day I got the job offer that was supposed to change my life. I remember that morning very clearly. I was sitting at the small kitchen table in my apartment, staring at my laptop screen. My coffee had gone cold. I had been refreshing my email every 10 minutes for almost 2 hours. Then the message finally appeared. Subject: Job offer, Urban Development Coordinator. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The position was in Denver. It was everything I had worked toward since college, a real career opportunity, a chance to move out of our small town and start something new. I read the email 3 times before it felt real. Then I called my parents. I expected excitement, maybe even pride. Instead, there was silence on the other end of the phone. Finally, my mother spoke. Her voice was careful. Too careful. Elena, are you sure that's a good idea? I laughed nervously. What do you mean? It's an amazing opportunity. My father came on the line next. Denver is a stressful city. That response confused me. Lots of cities are stressful. That's normal. But my parents didn't sound normal. They sounded concerned. Deeply concerned. The kind of concern people use when they're talking about someone fragile. Then my mother said something that made my stomach tighten. Honey, you know how stress affects you. I stared at the wall across from my kitchen table. What are you talking about? Another pause. Longer this time. Finally, my father said something slowly, like he was choosing each word carefully. Elena, do you remember what happened during your second year of college? I frowned. Of course I remembered college. I graduated with honors. I had 2 internships. What exactly are you referring to? My mother sighed softly. The breakdown. For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. What breakdown? Another silence. Then she said it again. When you had your mental episode. The words felt completely disconnected from reality. I had never had a mental episode. Yes, during my second year of college, I went through a difficult period. My roommate had died suddenly in a car accident. I had gone to counseling for a few weeks. That wasn't a breakdown. That was grief. But the way my parents were talking, it sounded like they believed something very different had happened. Or worse, like they wanted everyone else to believe something different had happened. At the time, I didn't realize how serious that difference would become. Because what I didn't know yet was that my parents had already been telling that story about me for years. A story where I wasn't successful. A story where I wasn't independent. A story where I was unstable. And the most terrifying part was this. I hadn't heard the story yet, but almost everyone else in town already had. At first, I didn't take what my parents said seriously. Families misunderstand things sometimes. People exaggerate memories. I assumed that was all this was. A misunderstanding. So I accepted the job in Denver. And for a few weeks, everything felt normal. I packed my apartment. I said goodbye to friends. I prepared to start a new chapter of my life. But about 2 weeks before I was supposed to move, something strange happened. My future employer called me. The number came up on my phone while I was at the grocery store. I remember standing in the frozen food aisle when I answered. "Hello, this is Elena." The voice on the other end sounded polite, but cautious. "Elena, this is Michael Harding from the hiring department." My stomach tightened immediately. Usually employers don't call before a start date unless something changed. "Yes, of course," I said. "Is everything okay?" There was a short pause. Then he asked a question that didn't make sense. "Is there something about your medical history you forgot to disclose during the hiring process?" I felt my mind go blank. "My medical history?" "Yes," he said carefully. "We received a phone call this morning from someone who said they were concerned about your ability to handle stressful situations." I leaned against the freezer door. "Who called you?" Another pause. "They said they were a family member." My chest felt tight. "I'm guessing. Your mother." For a moment, I couldn't speak. My mother had called my future employer, and apparently she had told them something about my mental health. "I'm sorry," I said slowly, "but there must be some kind of misunderstanding." Mr. Harding sounded uncomfortable. "She told us you had a serious psychological breakdown during college and that stressful environments can trigger dangerous behavior." Dangerous behavior. The words echoed in my head. "I have never had a psychological breakdown," I said firmly. He sighed. "I'm not accusing you of anything, Elena, but when an immediate family member contacts us with concerns like this, it creates liability issues for the company." That word again, liability, which meant risk, which meant they were reconsidering hiring me. "Are you withdrawing the offer?" I asked quietly. He hesitated. "We're reviewing the situation." The call ended 5 minutes later. I stood in the grocery store holding my phone, staring at the floor. It felt like the ground had shifted under me. But I still believed there had to be some kind of explanation. So I drove straight to my parents' house. My parents still lived in the same house I grew up in. White siding, blue shutters. The rose bushes my mother planted 15 years ago still lined the walkway. From the outside, nothing had changed. But when my mother opened the door and saw my face, something in her expression told me she already knew why I was there. "Elena," she said softly, "you look upset." I stepped inside without answering. "Did you call my employer?" Her expression didn't change. "I just wanted to make sure they understood your situation." "My situation? What situation?" I demanded. My father walked into the living room from the kitchen. "Elena, lower your voice." "No," I said, "not until someone explains what's going on." My mother clasped her hands together like she was trying to calm me. "Honey, you don't have to pretend everything is fine." "I'm not pretending anything." "Yes, you are," she said gently. That tone, the same tone someone might use with a child who didn't understand reality. "You've always struggled with pressure," she continued. "No, I haven't." My father shook his head slowly. "You don't remember how bad it got." "Bad. It had never been bad. I had been sad. I had gone to counseling. That was it." "You're rewriting my life," I said. My mother's face softened even more. "See?" she whispered to my father. "This is what I was afraid of." "Afraid of what?" "You're doing it again, Elena," my father said quietly. "Doing what?" "Getting defensive." I felt something cold settle in my chest. For the first time in my life, I realized something terrifying. They actually believed the story they were telling, or at least they were pretending to believe it. And they were very good at it. Good enough that if someone overheard this conversation, they might think I was the unreasonable one. "You had no right to call my employer," I said. My mother's expression hardened slightly. "I was protecting you." "From what?" "From making a mistake that could hurt you." "No," I said. "You were protecting yourselves." That was the first time I saw something flash in her eyes. Anger. Real anger. "You don't understand how the world works yet," she said. "I'm 25. And emotionally fragile." The words hung in the air between us. I stared at her. "Do you hear yourself?" My father stepped forward. "Elena, maybe it's best if you stay in town for a while. Take some time to stabilize." Stabilize. Like I was unstable. Like I needed supervision. Like I wasn't capable of running my own life. Something inside me snapped. "I'm moving to Denver," I said. My mother shook her head slowly. "No, you're not." And the calm certainty in her voice scared me more than anything else she had said that night, because she sounded absolutely sure, absolutely confident, like she knew something I didn't. And it turned out she did. Because the call to my employer wasn't the first call she had made. It was just the first one I discovered. Over the next few weeks, strange things started happening. My friend Jessica stopped returning my messages. Then my landlord called to ask if everything was okay at home. Even my old college advisor emailed me asking if I needed support. At first, I didn't understand why everyone suddenly seemed concerned about me. But eventually, the truth started to surface. My parents had been talking. Not just to my employer, to everyone. Neighbors, friends, former professors, church members. They were telling people that I had a history of mental instability, that I struggled with emotional control, that stress made me unpredictable. And because they sounded so calm, so worried, so convincing, people believed them. The scariest part wasn't that they were lying. It was how easily the lie spread. In a town of 5,000 people, rumors don't travel slowly. They explode. Within a month, people were looking at me differently. Like I might break at any moment. Like I might snap. Like I was someone fragile and unpredictable. I could feel it everywhere. The way conversations stopped when I entered a room, the careful tone people used with me, the sympathy in their eyes. Pity. Pure pity. And that was when I realized something even worse. My parents weren't trying to protect me. They were trying to control me. And if they succeeded, I would never escape this town. Never build my own life. Never become independent. Because who hires someone everyone believes is unstable? Who trusts someone with that reputation? That was the moment the truth finally became clear. My parents weren't worried about my mental health. They were destroying my credibility. One phone call at a time. By the time winter arrived, almost everyone in town believed the same story about me. That I was unstable. That I couldn't handle pressure. That my parents were doing their best to protect me from myself. I had already lost the Denver job. The company eventually emailed me saying they were concerned about liability. They wished me well, but the message was clear. No company wanted to take the risk. My social circle slowly disappeared too. Some friends stopped answering messages. Others acted polite but distant. They treated me carefully, like I might break at any moment. Or worse, like I might become dangerous. And the most painful part was this. My parents looked like heroes. In public, they spoke softly about me. They told people they were worried, that they were trying to help their daughter through a difficult mental struggle. People admired them for it. They praised their patience, their dedication, their love. Meanwhile, my life was quietly collapsing. And for a while, I didn't know how to fight it. Because how do you prove you're sane when people already believe you aren't? Anything you say can be used as evidence against you. Anger becomes emotional instability. Defending yourself becomes denial. Even silence becomes withdrawal. It was a perfect trap. At least, it felt perfect. Until someone finally noticed something strange. Her name was Mrs. Alvarez. She had been my history teacher during my last 2 years of high school. Back then, she had been one of the few adults who encouraged me to think independently, to question things, to challenge ideas. After college, I didn't see her often. But small towns have a way of reconnecting people. One afternoon, she ran into my parents at a charity event hosted by the community center. From what I later heard, my mother brought me up during conversation. She sighed sadly, shook her head, spoke in the same gentle tone she used with everyone else. "Elena has been struggling again," she said. Mrs. Alvarez listened quietly. My father added more details, carefully chosen details, stories about emotional instability, stress, breakdowns, concern, and Mrs. Alvarez nodded politely. But something about the story did right with her, because she had known me for years. She had seen me during stressful exams, during debate competitions, during difficult projects. She had never seen the kind of instability my parents described. So instead of arguing with them, she asked a simple question, a question that seemed harmless, almost casual. She looked at my parents and said, "If Elena has had serious mental instability for years, why did neither of you ever mention it when she applied for the academic scholarship?" My parents apparently froze, just for a second. But it was enough. Because that scholarship application had required recommendation letters, and my parents had proudly supported it. At the time, they had described me as disciplined, focused, emotionally mature. Mrs. Alvarez remembered that clearly. So her question exposed something very important. Two completely different versions of the same daughter. In one version, I was strong and capable. In the other, I was unstable and fragile. Both stories couldn't be true. Mrs. Alvarez didn't accuse them. She simply asked another question. When exactly did these problems start? My parents gave vague answers. College, stress, emotional decline. But Mrs. Alvarez kept thinking. Because something else didn't make sense. If I had truly been unstable for years, why had I graduated with honors? Why had professors recommended me? Why had companies interviewed me? And why had none of those concerns ever appeared before I tried to move away from town? That was the moment she became suspicious. And unlike most people in town, Mrs. Alvarez didn't stop asking questions. 2 weeks later, she called me. It was the first time someone in months spoke to me without pity in their voice. "Elena," she said, "I want to ask you something, honestly." "Okay." "Have you ever been diagnosed with a serious psychological disorder?" "No." "Have you ever had a breakdown?" "No." She paused. Then she said something that almost made me cry. "I thought so." For the next hour, I told her everything. The job offer, the phone calls, the rumors, the way my parents had been quietly spreading their version of my life. When I finished, she was silent for a moment. Then she said something unexpected. "Elena, I think your parents made a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" "They told the wrong person the wrong story." Mrs. Alvarez had been teaching in that town for 32 years. She knew almost everyone, including people my parents had contacted, former teachers, school administrators, community leaders. Within a week, she started quietly asking questions, and the pattern became clear. My parents had called many people, but their story changed slightly every time. Different details, different timelines, different explanations. And once people started comparing notes, the inconsistencies became obvious. Soon a few uncomfortable conversations started happening around town. At church, at the community center, at the grocery store. People began realizing something strange. The story about my instability didn't actually have any real evidence. Just concerned parents repeating the same vague claims. Then someone asked my old college advisor. He confirmed something important. Yes, I had attended short-term counseling. After my roommate died. Grief counseling. Not psychological treatment. Not a breakdown. Just grief. And suddenly the entire narrative started to collapse. About a month later, my parents attended another community event. But this time the atmosphere was different. People were polite, but distant. Careful. Some avoided them completely. Because once doubt enters a rumor, it spreads just as fast as the rumor itself. Eventually, the truth became impossible to ignore. My parents had exaggerated, manipulated, and misrepresented my life. Whether they did it out of control, fear, or something else, the result was the same. They had destroyed their own credibility, and the town realized it. 6 months later, I moved away, not to Denver, but to Seattle. A different job, a different opportunity, a completely different life. This time, there were no phone calls, no rumors, no interference, because the people around me didn't know my parents. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely free. I haven't spoken to my parents in 3 years. Not because I hate them, but because I finally understand something important. Some people don't want you to grow. They don't want you to leave. They don't want you to become independent, because independence means they lose control. And sometimes, the only way to win that battle is to walk away. If there's one lesson I learned from this experience, it's this. The truth doesn't always win immediately. Sometimes lies spread faster. Sometimes they destroy things before anyone questions them. But eventually, all it takes is one person asking the right question, and the entire story begins to fall apart. So I'm curious. If you were in my situation, would you ever forgive your parents? Or would you walk away like I did? Tell me in the comments. I'd really like to know what you think.